My parents treated me like their maid, until the CEO they admired looked at me and said, "Boss? Welcome back with a new real shock story. Before we start, comment and tell me which city you're watching from. At the end, don't forget to subscribe and rate it from 0 to 10. Let's enjoy the story, everyone."
I still remember the way that morning began. Quiet, heavy, but with no sign of what was about to happen. My name is Alec Rose, and I want to tell you something that changed my life forever. Something no one saw coming. I grew up in a house where I wasn't treated like a daughter. Not really. My parents, my own parents, treated me more like, I don't know, their maid. Someone who existed to serve them. Not to be heard, not to be respected. My mornings began before the sun even rose. My days ended long after everyone else was asleep. I washed dishes before school, cleaned the house before dinner, ironed clothes before bedtime. And I never complained. Not because I wanted to, because I had learned there was no other option. School was my only escape. At least there, I could breathe. But I carried home with me every day the weight of silence. I never told anyone what it was like at home. Not my friends, not my teachers. Shame kept me quiet. I thought maybe this was how life was supposed to be. Maybe my job was to just disappear into the background, invisible, unnoticed, until that day. It started like any other day. I woke before dawn. The smell of fried bread filled the kitchen. My father was already at the table, shouting orders about breakfast and chores. My mother was busy in another room. I didn't hesitate. My hands moved automatically, cutting, cooking, cleaning, everything without question. My mind was on autopilot. But there was something different in the air that morning. I didn't know it yet, but it was the kind of difference that changes everything. Later that day, I overheard my parents whispering in the living room. Their voices were low, urgent. They spoke about a meeting, about someone important, someone they wanted to impress. I didn't pay much attention at first. Meetings and visitors happened all the time. But something about their tone made my stomach tighten. It was not just excitement, it was tension. Something felt off. By afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to see a man in a tailored suit, confident, calm, almost commanding. My parents greeted him warmly, guiding him inside with smiles I knew weren't genuine. They told me later he was a CEO. I didn't know much about him, except that my parents kept talking about how important he was. I was told to clean, to prepare the house for his visit, and to make sure everything was perfect. So I worked. I moved silently, washing dishes, arranging food, cleaning until my hands were raw. I felt invisible as always. But then something happened. As I carried a tray to the living room, I noticed him, the CEO, watching me. Not like everyone else. Not like a servant. He looked at me with curiosity, with something I had never felt before. Recognition. It was strange and unsettling. I turned away quickly, pretending not to notice, but I could feel the weight of his gaze. My parents didn't notice. They were too busy fussing, whispering, and smiling for him. They never noticed me. That evening, after the introductions and polite conversation, my parents stepped away to speak privately. I was left in the living room, clearing plates. Then he spoke. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it cut through everything. "Boss," he said. I froze. My hands stopped moving. My breath caught in my chest. I looked up. He was smiling slightly, not mockingly, but with respect. The room went silent. My parents' faces hardened. They glanced at me, then away. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it. That one word, boss, was more than a title. It was proof that I existed, that I mattered, and something inside me shifted. For years, I had been invisible, used, silenced, but in that moment, something inside me awakened, a spark, a question. Why had no one ever seen me like that before? Tonight, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My parents spoke in whispers in the next room. I could hear frustration in their voices, tension that wasn't there before. I didn't know it yet, but this was the start of something that would change my life completely. Something I couldn't turn away from. Something that would force me to stand. The next morning, something felt different in the air. The house was quieter. My parents moved with sharper voices, but softer tones when they thought I wasn't listening. The word boss had lingered in my mind all night, like an echo I couldn't shake. I kept replaying it again and again, wondering why it felt so powerful. Breakfast was awkward. My father barely looked at me, and my mother seemed distracted. I tried to pretend I didn't notice, but inside I was already changing. My mind kept going back to that moment in the living room, the way the CEO had said it, the way he had looked at me. I had never seen anyone look at me like that before. Not my parents, not teachers, not friends, not even myself. That day, I went through my routine the same way I always had, making beds, washing dishes, folding clothes, but everything felt different. Every movement felt heavier, as if I was carrying not just chores, but something unspoken. I could hear my parents whispering again when they thought I was in my room. It wasn't just about that meeting anymore. It was something deeper, something dangerous. Later, the CEO came again. This time, it wasn't formal. He didn't arrive with my parents in tow. He came alone. I was in the kitchen, scrubbing a pan when he stepped in. His voice startled me. "You've been working too hard," he said softly. There was no judgment in his tone, just quiet observation. "Why don't you take a break?" I didn't answer. I just kept cleaning, but my hands shook. For some reason, I couldn't stop wondering why he cared. My parents had never cared. They never asked how I felt, if I was tired, if I needed rest. But he noticed. That evening, things escalated. My parents invited him to stay for dinner. I served the food silently, watching them talk and laugh, acting like everything was fine. But I could see it. Tension, irritation, unease in their faces. They were whispering again, exchanging quick glances, and I knew they were talking about me. After dinner, the CEO stayed behind, asking to speak with me alone. I was hesitant. My parents called after me, telling me to hurry, but I ignored them. Something told me I needed to go. We stepped into the quiet hallway. He looked at me for a moment, studying me like someone trying to understand a puzzle they couldn't solve. Then he spoke. "You work harder than anyone I've ever seen," he said. "And no one should treat you like you're invisible. You deserve more." His words hit me harder than I expected. I felt a swell of emotions. Anger, relief, fear, hope, all crashing together. I wanted to say something, but my voice froze. I turned to leave, but he stopped me. "Alec, you need to hear this. Not everyone gets recognized for who they are. But I see you." I swallowed hard. My heart was pounding. I didn't know why. but his words stayed with me long after I left that hallway. I lay in bed that night wondering, what would happen if I stopped being invisible? What if I stood up for myself? Little did I know, the answer was about to come in the most shocking way. The next day, everything would change. The morning came slower than usual. I woke to the sound of muffled voices again. My parents, always whispering when they thought I wasn't listening. I lay still, pretending to be asleep, but my mind was racing. The night before, the CEO's words replayed over and over. I see you. That phrase haunted me. I didn't understand why it felt so heavy, so powerful, but I knew something was shifting inside me. I couldn't ignore it anymore. That day, the chores felt heavier. Every step I took, every plate I washed, every corner I scrubbed, I could feel eyes on me, though no one said a word. My parents spoke less, and when they did, it was sharper, colder. There was tension now in the air, something unsaid but loud enough to be felt. I caught them glancing at me more often, their eyes flickering with suspicion. Later, when the CEO returned, it wasn't just a visit. It was deliberate. My parents stepped aside as he walked in, and for the first time, I saw him look directly at me, not like a guest, not like a stranger, but with a kind of quiet respect that unsettled me. I was in the middle of cleaning when he approached. "You're still working," he said softly, almost a statement. Not a question, not a request, just truth. "Yes," I murmured, without meeting his eyes. "You don't need to do everything for them," he said, gesturing toward my parents who were speaking quietly in the living room. "They're letting you disappear. They don't see what you're worth." I didn't reply. I wanted to argue, to deny it, but the words stuck in my throat. I had thought my life was invisible, that maybe I deserved it. But his voice broke that thought into pieces I couldn't put back together. The rest of the evening felt tense. My parents were unusually quiet, their smiles strained. I could feel the shift. Something was about to break. When the CEO left that night, he didn't say goodbye in a polite way. Instead, he looked at me once more and said, "You need to decide who you want to be, Alec." I went to bed with that sentence echoing in my head. I thought about what he meant, and somewhere deep inside, I felt fear. Fear that they would never let me decide, that they would always keep me in this place, silent, unseen, forgotten. The days that followed were worse. My chores grew heavier, my parents colder. They began speaking less to me and more about me, as if deciding how to deal with the change they sensed in me. Every glance I caught felt like a test. Every sigh in the hallway a silent warning. Then came the moment that changed everything. One evening, my parents brought the CEO back to the house, this time without warning me. I was cleaning upstairs when I heard their voices rise in the living room. Curiosity pulled me closer. I heard my mother say sharply, "We can't let her think she's more than she is." My father agreed quietly. My heart pounded. Something broke in me. I stopped breathing for a moment. They were talking about me, about what I was becoming. I could hear the CEO's calm voice replying softly, but I couldn't make out the words. I stepped into the hallway. My feet were heavy. I didn't want to see their faces, but I couldn't stop myself. I peeked into the living room and froze. The CEO was standing, looking at my parents, and they were staring at him, not angrily, but in fear. There was something in his voice I couldn't hear clearly, but the tension in the room was unbearable. Then my name came out, quietly, like a weight dropping. Alec. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. My parents turned toward me, their faces unreadable. And I knew, whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same again. That night, I lay awake, my mind spinning. I realized they weren't just upset about me being recognized. They were scared. Scared of losing control. Scared of me standing up. And I wasn't sure if that fear was going to protect me or destroy me. I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't go back to being invisible. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was a storm, my heart pounding so loud I thought it would burst. I kept replaying my parents' voices, their words like knives cutting into my chest. We can't let her think she's more than she is. That sentence echoed in my mind, over and over again. Morning came slow, and I moved through the house like a ghost. My parents barely spoke to me. Their faces were colder now, as though a decision had been made. I didn't know what they were planning, but I could feel the air around me tighten like a noose. When the CEO arrived at again that afternoon, I felt my stomach twist into knots. He didn't smile this time. He walked past my parents without greeting them and stopped in front of me. There was no warmth in his tone now, only urgency. "Alec, you have to be ready," he said quietly. "They're scared of what you represent. That means you're close." I blinked, unsure what he meant. Before I could speak, my parents called him into the living room. I heard their voices low but tense. I stepped closer, trying to hear. Then it happened. My father's voice rose sharply. "We can't let this go on. She's getting too bold. We won't allow it." My mother's voice added softly, but with steel. "This ends now." Something in me snapped. I stepped into the living room without thinking. The silence hit like a physical blow. My parents looked at me, not with love, not with warmth, but with something darker. Fear. And maybe anger. The CEO turned to me then, his eyes locked on mine. "Alec," he said, "you have to stand for yourself." Before I could answer, my father spoke again. "You think you're the boss? You think you can walk away from us? This is your home. You belong here." I felt my chest tighten. My breath came fast. I looked at my parents, at the man who had first called me boss. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about chores, or respect, or recognition. This was about control. Everything came crashing down at once. My mother stepped forward, her hand trembling. My father's face was red with anger. The CEO stood firm, silent but unmoving. Then my father said something that stopped my heart. "You have to choose. Tonight. Either you obey or you leave." The room felt heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. My mind raced. Everything I had believed about myself, everything I had hidden away, was now at stake. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My eyes filled with tears, but my voice caught in my throat. I wanted to run, but I knew running wouldn't fix this. This was the moment I had been heading toward without even knowing it. The CEO, his eyes softened. "This is your moment, Alec. You decide." And just like that, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The room felt frozen. My father's words still echoed. "Either you obey or you leave." My chest ached. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, loud enough to drown out everything else. My parents stared at me, their faces a mask of control and expectation. The CEO stood silently, watching, as if waiting for something I couldn't yet name. I stepped back. My mind was a whirlwind. All my life I had obeyed. Every dish washed, every floor scrubbed, every quiet nod to their demands. It was all obedience. But this moment was different. I could feel the weight of every single thing they had taken from me. My freedom, my voice, my worth. For the first time, I spoke. My voice was trembling, but steady. I can't. My father's face twisted in shock. My mother's eyes widened. Silence followed, thick and heavy, as though the air itself was holding its breath. I looked at them, really looked, and for the first time, I stopped seeing them as parents. I saw them as my captors. I can't live like this anymore, I said again, louder. I'm not your maid. I'm not invisible. I deserve to be seen, and I deserve to decide my own life. The CEO stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. You're not alone, Alec. You never were. You just didn't know it. My parents didn't answer. They just stared, their silence louder than any words. I turned toward the door. Every step felt heavy but purposeful. I didn't look back. That night, I left. I walked out of that house carrying something I hadn't had for years. My own voice, my own power, my own choice. It wasn't easy. Every day since has been a battle. But I've learned something important. The hardest choices are the ones that make you free. And as I stand here now, I wonder, how many of us live in quiet obedience, Neve, or speaking up because we're afraid? How many let their worth be decided by others? This isn't just my story. It's the story of countless voices silenced, of hearts hidden under layers of fear and control, of battles fought quietly inside bedrooms and kitchens and living rooms across the world. The real question isn't whether I'll keep fighting. It's how many of us will stand up when it's our turn. Because the truth is, freedom begins the moment we choose ourselves.